In many of the past episodes, I referred to a specific form in which the piece object of the video had been built, the sonata form. Many of you have asked to understand this concept a little better, so this is exactly what we'll do today. Hello everyone, I'm Gianmaria Griglio and I welcome you to a new episode of Conducting Pills. If you're new here, this channel is all about classical music, score analysis and conducting tips. I want to thank all of my patrons for making this series possible, and now let's keep going. The name itself, sonata, had initially a very generic meaning. It was simply attached to any music that was played in opposition to being sung, for which the term was cantata, or being touched on a keyboard, the toccata. In the 16th century, it was popular to play vocal pieces on one or more instruments. The composers were publishing them as songs to be played. The Gabrielis wrote sonatas for 5 and 8 instruments. The lutanists were transcribing the dances in fashion at the time with separate movements to be played in a certain order, gradually arriving at the canonical prelude, Allemande, Corrente, Sarabande, and Giga, sometimes enriched by the gavotte, the furlana, and the passe-pied. In the 17th century, composers created a large body of instrumental pieces called sonate, which were no different from the suites or other collections of pieces. It was a time of searching and researching different forms, and only towards the end of the century the problem would be solved with the introduction of the monothematic form, also known as ternary form. The schema adopted was: a theme is exposed in a certain key, the same theme is developed and modulates to a different key, generally the dominant or the relative major if the original key was in minor, and once it reaches the second key, it goes back to the main key and moves to a conclusion. Throughout a good three-quarter of the 17th century, an enormous amount of composers tried to tackle this form. One of the most successful was Corelli with his Opus 5, which closed the century of research in 1700 exactly. Pioneers such as Pezel, Muffat, Couperin, Delaboco, and Rebel contributed to perfect a technique onto which the great geniuses of the 18th century built their masterpieces. Rameau, Scarlatti, Bach, Handel created a humongous repertoire of sonatas for organ, harpsichord, violins, cello, flute, oboes, and then trios and symphonies and all sorts of instrumental music. The old dance naming convention began to disappear in favor of the allegro, adagio, and presto. The monothematic form became part of the regular production of many well-renowned composers such as Vivaldi, Tartini, Marcello Leclerc, and Mondonville, who in one of his sonata handbooks gives up on the figured bass, just like Bach, in favor of writing completely the right hand's part. Telemann and many others in Germany enlarged the dimensions of the sonata as well as developed it towards what would become its final form, at least for now, adding a second theme inaugurating the era of the bithematic sonata. The schema became a theme A in the home key, a bridge modulating to a different key, usually the dominant or the relative major, a second theme B in the new key. There are examples of this already in the 1730s with Scarlatti and Leclerc. Around the 1760s, Europe started to largely adopt the bithematic sonata, even though the monothematic form kept being used. Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach wrote indifferently in both monothematic and bithematic forms, and so did Haydn and Mozart. Beethoven, on the other hand, had very precise ideas about it, specifically about the importance of the second theme. He generally structured it in 4 elements: a first melodic phrase, a second one more upbeat, a third one as a concluding element, going into a fourth one, the coda. This is really evident in the Pathétique sonata, for example. Beethoven also enhanced the difference between the first and second theme. By making the first more rhythmical and the second more lyrical, he creates a much more pronounced conflict, dramatizing a form that had not ventured yet in the field of personal passions. This heritage was, of course, taken up by the Romantics. Schumann, Chopin, Liszt were all in debt to Beethoven. They did not quite develop the form per se, but rather dug their heels deeper into its many emotional possibilities. The ultimate structure up to this point would be of 3 blocks: an exposition introducing 2 contrasting themes, development, where the music material is reworked in many different ways, and a recapitulation. Everything is framed by an introduction, tendentially slow in the case of a first past movement, and a coda. The evolution of the form risks stopping when César Franck gave it a new spin with his cyclic approach. Motives come back in a cyclic way in all parts of the piece, reinforcing its sense of unity. The famous violin and piano sonata of Franck has become the starting point of a new era of the sonata. The sonatas of the composers of the late 19th century and early 20th century, like Dukas, Fauré, Debussy, and Ravel, mark the different phases of the evolution of this form. The concept of tonality is shaken, and the tendency is to go into more contracted developments. New pioneers venture into atonality, polytonality, quarters of a tone, but the form of the sonata is rarely altered. Modern composers look back at it and sometimes adopt it as a model, as a structure to build something on. Now, why is this important for conductors and more in general for musicians to understand? Because it's essential for us to understand the grammar of a piece and its structure. The sonata form, more than any other form, traverses centuries and compositions of any kind, shaping the music into set hierarchies and giving us a map of what should be emphasized and what not. We, as interpreters, need to look at the big picture. We need to know where we're going with our musical thoughts. Identifying, understanding, and studying the form of the piece helps us precisely do that. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button right below this video and ring the bell so you will get notified every time a new video comes out. For more in-depth analysis, conducting technique and conducting exercises, look on my website where you can find more than 100 videos and follow my Facebook group. And if you want to support this series, you're always welcome to do so on Patreon. All the links are in the description. Let me know in the comments what you think about this video, if you have any suggestions for future ones, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of this series. In the meanwhile, please continue to enjoy music and be well.